20th century and the contemporary world. What is this part about? This part is about 20th century. It's very important century. It's very important century. When we look at the perspective, so 20th century, let's see what we have done in the second and third part of the course is to see the development of those who are still the foundations of Western civilization. Part 2, part 3, we go through, the theories of the social contract, the Enlightenment, the American Revolution, the French Revolution, the Industrial Revolution, in order to get a proper understanding of what are the main political concepts that emerged during these centuries and still are at the basis of what we call the West, of Western civilization, of Western politics. Okay? So, first thing and most important was what? The invention of the state. The invention of the state, the idea that the state is a social contract through which the population, the people gives sovereignty. And the state is based on this idea of sovereignty, but sovereignty should belong to the people. Democratic principles. And what? And that the basis of society is the individual. And so that the individual must protect it through what? Through individual rights. Liberalism. Liberalism is the protection of individual rights from everything. First of all, from the state, from power. So a state which does not respect individual rights is not a legitimate state. It's a tyrant. It's an illegitimate state. So individual rights, liberalism, individual rights, democracy, sovereignty to the people, the right to vote in order to elect the parliament, which will make the laws to which you obey. These are, the foundations. And then we see, so liberalism, democracy, and we also have socialism. Socialism, which say, yeah, but if all men are equal, are born equal, if all human beings are equal, we must promote the real equality of these human beings, which happen in society, in the social domain, in the social dimension, which is the social dimension, which is the real one. And so we have to promote a new kind of rights, which are social rights. Social rights. Social rights to education, social rights to have a good labor rights, healthcare, housing, and so on and so forth. So liberalism, socialism, democracy, and so on. This idea that, and these are all the ideas of the Enlightenment, which were theories, but then with the French Revolution and the American Revolution became reality, and we thought that by using reason we can understand reality, and by using reason we can build up a politics which is based on the progress, which is based on making the life of the people better, every day better, and every day better, and every day better. And so we arrived to this system, which is the basis of the Western civilization, which is liberalism, protection of individual rights, and democracy. Democracy meaning that the people must have sovereignty. And so, Western civilization say these are universal principles. These are universal principles that should be applied everywhere in the world. Everywhere in the world. So we promote this. The Universal Declaration of Human Rights means human rights should be applied everywhere, the United Nations and so on. So it's this principle of progress, slow progress, thinking that if you apply reason to politics, we'll get better, we'll get better. So when we enter the 20th century, we see a crisis. We see a crisis of this principle. Why? Because in the 20th century, all these ideas, were applied, but then they brought up this big state, which is very strong state. But what is used? This state is used to wage wars, World War One. You know, this idea of nationalism was, you know, kind of extremized and brought up World War One. World War Two even worse, you know, millions and millions and millions of people killed everywhere. Yeah, scientific progress, but this scientific progress was used to do what? To build up concentration camps, you know, technology and politics, build up to do genocide, mass extermination of people, science, progress, and then we have, you know, the construction of the atomic bomb, killing innocent people. You know, even the good one, not only the Nazi, but even the good one, you know, the United States, they built up a bomb, they spent a lot of money, and the best scientists in the world to do what? To build up a means of mass extermination, which was the atomic bomb, you know, and they bombed Hiroshima and Nagasaki, they killed innocent people. So what is this? This is a crisis of the values of the Enlightenment. Are these values really bringing us to progress or not? So, what we have seen as a critique of this system is, first of all, Nietzsche, which says, for example, Friedrich Nietzsche, he says, yeah, we build up technology, is supposed to improve our life. We believe that science will free up and will make our life better. But it says this is nihilism. We believe in science, we believe in progress, but then we see that we're totally enslaved by technology, and we spend all our days in getting angry at a machine which cannot even answer to us, and nothing works, never. All the time, you know, looking at cell phones, there is no network, it's broken, and blah, 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 blah. So we believe in science, but then we realize that every day technology is making our life more stressful, and we became slaves of slides which doesn't work, and so on and so forth. So Nietzsche called it nihilism. We replaced the belief in God with a belief in science, which is based on nothing. Because we believe in science in abstract. We say, yes, science is good, science is truth. But then if we see at our everyday life, science, technology, they're used to destroy the planet, they used to kill people, they used to build up means of mass destruction, and so on. So we believe in abstract, this is good, but then if we look at reality, it's bad. We believe that democracy and liberalism and human rights are the best systems, but then if we all complain about our political systems and say the politicians, they are corrupted, nothing works, they only work in their own interest, and so on and so forth. But on the other hand, we say, yeah, democracy is the best system, and so on. So it's nihilism, it's based on nothing. So that, you know, Nietzsche was the first one which somehow say, you know, God is dead, because we replaced, through the Enlightenment, we replaced God with science, with this belief in progress, and so on and so forth, but it's just another faith. Instead, we should, you know, rebuild our value from scratch. So, Friedrich Nietzsche is the founding father of existentialism, or somehow even of postmodernism, which is a doctrine which says we don't have to believe in the things that are presented to us, but we must question reality, you know, and rebuild our own values, instead of saying, yes, the values that we have, they are good, we must put it into question every time, every day. So this is the foundation of existentialism, of postmodernism, which means we don't have to believe anymore in big system, but we have to put in question and the question every day. So even though he was considered somehow a philosopher, a theorist, linked to the Nazi ideas because Hitler liked him a lot, he had nothing to do, because he was profoundly individualist. He didn't like mass ideology like fascism, like Nazism. He said everybody has to rebuild the system of values by itself, and you have every day to question and question and question the thing. This is pure postmodernism, and Nietzsche inspired postmodernism. So we saw Nietzsche, and then we introduced another thinker, which is way more balanced than Nietzsche, which is Max Weber. Okay, Max Weber. Now, I don't know why students mistaken Max Weber with Karl Marx. Different people, okay? Don't mistake it. Karl Marx, 19th century, Weber came up later. Weber came up later, but they have in common that they both were interested in capitalism. But now let's see what is the main point of Max Weber. Max Weber was one of the founding fathers of sociology, was very serious, very scholarly, applied, but he also, shared with Nietzsche some elements. First of all, Max Weber was talking about disenchantment of the world. So, the disenchantment of the world. So I say, with the Enlightenment, we say everything that is real is rational, everything that is rational is real. We have to apply scientific method and so on to understand reality. But Weber says this is also a disenchantment of the world. Because if we look in antiquity, if you look at the Middle Ages, before the theories of the social contract, before of the Enlightenment, everything that was happening in the world was considered as a metaphysical sign of something different, of something which was made of divine energies, which was made of beliefs, which has a deepness, was rooted in religious, was rooted in collective beliefs. But right now, so the world was enchanted. It looked at things and we saw metaphysical signs of something else, probably of God, probably of energies. And he says now the world is disenchanted. It look at reality and they only see reality called reality, and he wants to see, to understand it through reason, through science, through reason, through science. So this is the disenchantment of the world, which is led by a process of rationalization. A process of rationalization, okay? It's Max Weber. So he saw modernization as a process of rationalization that affects economic life, law, administration, and religion, eliminating traditional ideas and customary practices in favor of formally rational criteria. Okay, so he says modernity is a process of disenchantment of the world through rationalization. Apply rationality to politics and to society. And he says, okay, so what happened? What happened is there's all this modern process from early modernity, from the 15th century, after Christ, from Renaissance, humanism, Enlightenment, social contract theories, all these centuries that we got rid from the domination of the Catholic Church was a process led by rationalization and the idea that we want to apply rationality to politics and rationality to society. And this brought us to the birth of the two most important things that we have in modernity. On the political level, we have the state. We have the state. On the social level, we have capitalism. So he says both of them, the state and the capitalist system, are the result of this process of rationalization. Of a process of rationalization, we want to apply rationality to politics, and so we have this building up of a state system and of a capitalist system. Both of them are the result of a process of rationalization. So the state, you want to apply rationality to politics, so you don't have anymore the traditional power of the king, the charismatic power of the emperor, You have the rational power of the prime minister or the president of the republic, which is electing according to rules. You want to give sovereignty to the people, then you have to make the parliament elected, and then you have to build up what? A bureaucracy. Everything that is rational needs a bureaucracy. So the state is the building up of a big bureaucracy. But then both the state and capitalism are bringing the modern man into an iron cage. We want to promote democracy. We want to promote individual rights. So we have to build up a state to realize democracy and to protect individual rights. We must put judges, we must put a system of people who are in charge, of public servants who are in charge of organizing the election, of making things work, and so on and so forth. But then you have this rational, impersonal power, which is modern bureaucracy. It's an iron cage, because you go there and you don't know who has the power, what's going on. It's like, I was making, last class, I was making the example of you guys when you go to the questura, to the questura, because to live here you need a paper. This paper is just something that certifies that you comply with the rules, with the requirements of the immigration law. So you have to go there and you need to obtain this paper in order to be present in this country. And to obtain this paper, you have to face, impersonal power, which is the power of bureaucracy, in which you felt trapped because you have to stay in line for 2, 3, 4 hours. And you cannot even get angry at the guy because the guy is just making his own specific function and is not making, so he's not responsible. And you have this huge impersonal power, which is, making things more complex, and you become enslaved, encaged in this iron cage of the state, of the bureaucracy. But what Max Weber says is the other force of organization, capitalism, is producing the same thing. What is capitalism? Capitalism is the rationalization of the economy. Through what? Through a system, a legal system of private property, through a system of division of labor in order to increase productivity. So you apply rationality to the production of the commodities, and so you have the management, you have the workers, you have to go to work 5 days per week, 8 hours per day, all the same days for the rest of your life. An iron cage as well, capitalism as well. But what does it say? What Max Weber say about capitalism is also interesting, because he wrote this book. Because he liked, one is called Karl Marx. Capitalism is the result of class struggle and is an economic structure. Max Weber, different name, different philosopher, Max Weber, he say, yeah, Karl Marx, you have nice ideas, but I want to propose a different idea of how capitalism was born. So he wrote this book, The Protestant Ethic and the Spirit of Capitalism. His idea is that capitalism was an effect of the Protestant Reformation. Because he said, let's go see where capitalism was actually born before the Industrial Revolution. In the Netherlands, in Germany, because you have the merchants, you have the bankers there. They start to exchange commodities and so on and so forth. And what happened in those places that didn't happen in other countries? The Protestant Reformation, the Calvinist reform. And who were the first capitalists? The Calvinists. Why? Why the Calvinists? They started to grow up with trade, with commerce, with the banking system. Because, you say, the doctrine, Calvin doctrine, is predestination. Some of us, we go to paradise we don't know who are them, but some of them are predestined, and we can see some signs of predestination, which is hard working and making money and hard working. This, according to the Calvinist doctrine, is a sign of predestination. So you have to work hard, you have to make money. If you work hard and you make money, you probably are one of the good which will go to paradise, but you don't have to take this money to enjoy, to make, to have fun, to enjoy life. No, you have to still have a sober life. And so the principle of capitalism is more or less the fact that you make money, but you do investment. Again, in order to make the business grow, you don't, accumulate then as a private. So it gives a genealogy of capitalism, which was, according to him, was based on this Calvinist sect, So was a result of the Protestant ethic. So he explained these two big processes, the formation and the transformation of the state, and the formation and the transformation of capitalism. And both of them are the result of the modern drive towards the rationalization of the modern world, the Enlightenment values, okay? So, also capitalism, it's this new reality based on numbers, based on statistics, based on the division of labor and so on and so. Also, the capitalism is part of what produces an iron cage for the modern individual, which on the one hand, has to face the huge machine of state bureaucracy, and on the other hand, to survive, to, make a living, has to participate in the extreme rationalization of the capitalist production, with this law of division of production, of the rational organization of production, and so on and so forth. Okay, so also capitalism was a big force for the disenchantment of the world. Okay, so then we see about Weber. So what does he say, Weber? Weber says Weber also liked very much Thomas Hobbes. What is the state for Max Weber? For Max Weber says the state is that political organization who can achieve the monopoly of legitimate violence. Is that rational political organization who can achieve the monopoly of the use of legitimate violence. What does it mean? He also makes a genealogy of the state. He says how the state was born, how the states come after. Yeah, we say the theory of the social contract, but if you look at reality, there is a group which is able to, build up an army, to build up a police corps in order, a body of police which makes the law respected. How? Because if somebody breaks the law, this, the state is that organization who has the force to make the law respected. Through police, through jail, through enforcement, through army, and through coercion, which means legitimate violence. So the state is that organization who achieved the monopoly of what we consider legitimate violence. So here you remember what we said about Thomas Hobbes. Then we saw the three types of power promoted by Max Weber, and here you will see all the details about the theory of Max Weber. But what I want to do nowadays is to introduce a third theorist, which was a critique of the principles of Enlightenment, of the Enlightenment. So here you find a detailed explanation on my slides, also on his relationship between Nietzsche and Weber, of his theory of the state, of his theory of power. But I want to complete this, introduction to the 20th century through this other thinker, Carl Schmitt. Okay, so we have these three thinkers, Friedrich Nietzsche, Max Weber, Carl Schmitt. The three are, all the three are Germans, you know. All the three show some hints on the crisis of Western civilization, on the crisis of liberalism, on the crisis of the Enlightenment. And they address it from different point of view. Also, all the three are Germans and write just before that Hitler came to power. And Hitler was somehow the outcome of the crisis of the Enlightenment, of liberalism, of Western principles, and so on and so forth. So, Carl Schmitt was a lawyer, legal scholar, he was German, and he embraced Nazism. He became a Nazi theorist. He went to jail, and his main point is he wanted to develop a critique of liberalism, wanted to develop a critique of liberalism. So, what you have to remind about Carl Schmitt, this thinker, is first of all the concept of the political, okay? The concept of the political. So, this is a very important point for you guys because you study political science, and Carl Schmitt was trying to say, let's try to define politics. Let's try to define politics. And they say nowadays we see politics as whatever has to do with the state and with the power of the state. So we consider politics, you know, the action of the government, the parliament, the political parties, and so on and so forth. So whatever has to do with the state. But this is, you know, this is just reflecting contemporary politics in which the state is the fundamental institution. But can we find a more general and abstract principle to define politics beyond the state? Something, you know, which is deeper, which is most profoundly understandable as a general principle of politics. So his idea was the effort to find a principle which is the foundation of politics, and so what he called the concept of the political. So he said, what we have, it was a jurist, it was an academic. So what he says is, in all the other academic field, we know that there are two concepts defining this field of study. For example, those who study moral ethics, moral philosophy, and so on, is based on the distinction between what is good and what is evil. Those who study aesthetics is the distinction between what is beautiful, what is ugly. What you study law is based on the distinction between what is right and what is wrong, what is legitimate and what is illegitimate. Who study economics is the distinction between profitable and unprofitable. So what about politics? What is the main distinction, which is the foundation for politics? How can we imagine the definition of politics by thinking of two concepts, an opposition of two concepts, a juxtaposition between two principles? And so Carl Schmitt says, the concept of the political is based on the specific distinction between friend and enemy. Friend and enemy. There is politics only when there is a disagreement and when there are two parts who have different ideas about one topic. And so when there is, you know, the possibility of saying these are my friends because they have my own ideas, they share my own values, they share my own opinion about this point, and these are my enemies because we disagree on one point, we disagree on this point, and so we have a disagreement. So he says politics is when we have a disagreement and we have a distinction between two parts, which are the part of my friends and the parts of my enemies. There is politics if we share the same view, if we all share the same point, there is no politics, because we all agree. We all agree, so there is no need for politics. Politics is the principle that emerges when there is a disagreement, when there is a division between two parts. Indeed, the political parties, parts. You take one part. There is politics when you take one part, when there are two or more parts and you consider each other, friends and enemies. And so what it says is the origin of politics is this disagreement, is this division, is the possibility of having two parts. So what it says basically is the matrix, the model, the basic pattern for politics is the model of the war. The war is politics at its extreme, because there you have two parts which are clearly divided, friends and enemy, and who are ready to kill each other for making its principle prevailing. What it is? It's which kind of inimicizia, which kind of enemy is this one? It's not a private enemy, it's a public enemy. It's nothing, meaning there is nothing personal. If there is a war and you find a soldier from one army and a soldier from another army, they have to kill each other. But as we say, nothing personal, If nowadays you see a Russian soldier who meets one Ukrainian soldier, maybe they have nothing against each other. Maybe under other conditions they would have having dinner together with their own families. They would have been friends. But under this condition, which is political conditions, they are public enemy and their duty is to kill each other. So it's a public enemy. So there is politics when there is this, relationship in which you identify an enemy and you're ready to get until the last consequences with this enemy, which meaning, go to war with this other part, with this other enemy. This is the foundation of politics. The foundation of politics is a division and the possibility of recognizing an enemy, which is not a personal enemy. It has nothing, nothing to do with personal thing. It's only a political enemy. It's founded on this kind of, public level of distinction. So, what you say is we need this. We need this distinction. We need a conflict. We need a struggle. We need this. Politics is not neutral. Politics is when there is this antagonism, this conflict. Politics cannot be neutral. So what he says is liberalism say, we have to make these universal values, we have to make these human rights which are good for everybody, which we have to make democracy which is good for everybody, and so we just need to make a global constitution for these values that we all agree. He say, no, dear liberalism, you want to make universal something, and so you destroy politics. In politics, you must have two different points, two different visions. So what he says is liberalism is try to say that this principle, human rights, democracy, liberal democracy are general, are universal. There is not any more discussion, there is not any more division, and so there is not any more politics. Liberalism is the neutralization of politics. Politics needs to have, a party, needs political parties, needs different parts. Okay? So, what I say, he really doesn't like liberalism. You understand why at the beginning of the 20th century liberalism had a big crisis. Liberal democracies had a big crisis. Exactly nowadays. Exactly like nowadays, because, it's the depoliticization of politics, because you say, we have to promote these universal values, these universal rights, these universal principles for politics. The rule of law is good everywhere and under any conditions. He said, this is a negation of the political. This is a negation of the political. Liberalism aims to neutralize the political because it tries to remove its own origin. Instead, we have to understand that we cannot remove the conflict, the antagonism that is at the origin of politics. So we have this very, 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 very famous, quotation from Clausewitz, which says, war is the continuation of politics with other means. War is the continuation of politics with other means. This was Clausewitz. But Carl Schmitt say, no. As politics is the continuation of war with other means. Because when you have war, you have a conflict. You have a conflict which is an armed conflict. You use violence to promote your own view, to affirm it, to establish your own view, and so you use violence. And they say, politics is the codification of this antagonism. Instead of using violence, you use debates, you use discussion, you use the parliament, you use, the means of information, you campaign, and so on and so forth. But the origins remains a state of war. You need two parts which has disagreement. This is why under totalitarianism you don't have politics anymore. Because totalitarianism, you cannot have opposition, you cannot have different voices. So there is no politics anymore. You need two or more parts, two or more views in order to be politics. So the real origin, the matrix of politics is a system of war, is a division, is antagonism. Liberalism, according to Schmidt, tried to deny this origin and try to make universal principles that are good for everyone. And he says this does not work this way. The origin of politics is in this conflict.